Good evening. On behalf of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council, I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 2013 meeting. A couple of things that I would remind everybody before we get started. First of all, and I have to remind myself every time, but if you have any cell phones on, pagers, that sort of thing, please put them on buzz or turn them off as most appropriate. Secondly, in preparation for our council meetings, all of the council members are given packages of materials to give us background information for our meetings. Samples of those documents are on the table over to my left, along with copies of our current budget information as well. If you have any interest in those things, please feel free to look at them. That being said, I will ask our clerk, Ms. Rosenbaum, if she'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Humphreys?
Here.
Mr. Berry?
Here.
Mayor Morgan?
Here.
And let the record reflect that 4 council members are present and Mrs. Lowe is absent this evening.
Thank you very much. Our next item is our traditional Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Bob Howard will lead us tonight.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have special employee presentations this evening, recognition of our employees, and I'll ask our town manager, Mr. Greg Kelly, if he'll handle that for us, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public, it's always a great opportunity for me to recognize our fellow employees, especially when they demonstrate longevity in working for the town in various positions. We have 2 awards tonight, one of which is for Andrew Gobby, who's been here for 5 years in service at the town shop with the Public Works Department. And Andrew had a prior commitment tonight, I believe, with swimming that prevents him from being here, but I will make a few comments on behalf of Andrew. Is that one thing I've come to know about him over the course of the past several years is there's not much out there he can't fix when it's broken. So he does a tremendous job for the Public Works Department. The other town employee is here tonight, and I'm going to call her up front and present her with her 5-year plaque as well as 5-year pin, and that is Miss Tennille Montgomery. And I got a few words to say about Tennille. The thing I want to say about Tennille is that she started here 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, and was actually an intern for the town of Abingdon in the tourism department. And we found how valuable she was, so I stole her away and brought her over into the administrative department, where we kept her for a few years. And here recently, in the last couple of years, we've since moved her to where her real calling is, and that's back into the tourism department, where she does all of their marketing. Tennille has gone on to further her education since she's been with the town, and has a master's degree now, or soon will be, any day now. Will have her master's degree, and she does a fantastic job. And any of you all that get the wolf whistles and all the various information that go out over there, Tennille has a big hand in doing those things, and she's always a face that you see out at all the events, and a lot of times on TV on behalf of the town of Abingdon. We're very, very grateful to have her here, and I would be remiss if I didn't also point out to you that Tennille was one of our fellow travelers to Abingdon, England a year ago today. In fact, a year ago today we were over there. And
Queen's Jubilee.
She did a wonderful job promoting the town while she was over there on our behalf. So it's my pleasure to thank you for all that you do for the town of Abingdon. Please join me in the
Can they see you over the counter? All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Council, we have three sets of minutes for our consideration this evening. We have the May 6, 2013 work session minutes, along with the regular meeting minutes of that day, and then the minutes of our May 15th, 2013 work session. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be noted to those? Hearing,
I think there was, it does indicate that in some of the items that Ms. Lowe, which was absent, she is recorded here as being here, which is like right here, the roll call vote.
by golly, that's of interest.
Well, several places in here, and I think I did mention that to Cecile, and she's going to make the correction, but I want to go ahead and
That's fine.
make
Yeah.
that.
It's already correct.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll bet I could entertain a motion that the minutes be approved as corrected.
I would so do that.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. Okay, item number E, we have petitions, public hearings, and first reading of ordinances. Our first public hearing this evening is, I will note it here, the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia is holding a public hearing to basically look at the proposed issuance of bonds by the Town of Abingdon. The estimated maximum amount of such bonds is $2,600,000. It is noted that more than 10% of the total bond proceeds is expected to be used for each of the following proposed purposes. First, to make a grant to the Economic Development Authority of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, for the purpose of promoting economic development, pay the costs of capital improvements to buildings, roads, storm drains, and sidewalks, and to pay costs of renovations to the Harry Coombs Recreation Center. Mr. Kelly, would you care to introduce this a little bit further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if you'll recall back throughout the budget work sessions that we had, in light of our capital improvement plan that we've been undertaking for the past few years, it became necessary to borrow certain funds to balance the budget in making those capital improvement plans come to fruition. In addition, approximately a year or so ago, the council made an appropriation to a local business in order to keep its corporate headquarters here within the town of Abingdon. That financial incentive was a match of what Washington County did, which totaled $1 million. The two of those combined with what we needed to balance the budget for the capital improvement plan and for the cash incentive to the business in town, which I will just mention is KVAT, is $2.6 million. In working through our bond counsel, Webster Day from Roanoke, Webster indicated that the structure of this bond would be such that $1 million would pass through the Economic Development Authority, would actually come into the town, but then would be passed off to the Economic Development Authority, and they would distribute it accordingly for economic development purposes. The additional $1.6 million that we are borrowing goes into the pot for those capital improvement plans. This is not all of the money necessary for those items, as much of the money is paid through various sources of state funding and also from a pool of reserve funds from the town. But I'll just specifically mention the things that are included in the $1.6 million borrowing. There are electronic upgrades to the police and the finance department totaling $195,000. There are Coombs Center renovations and repairs for the boiler, pool lining, roof, and other structural repairs totaling $445,000. There are town property repairs and upgrades to the historic properties, which total $150,000, and then the cost of a new structure to house 4 trolleys that the town has, which totaled $100,000. In addition, there were the pedestrian improvement projects of Whites Mill Road, Court Street, Oak Hill Street, totaling $550,000, and the Academy Drive project, for which our portion would be about $160,000. Those all total $1.6 million, coupled with the $1 million that will go to the EDA is the $2.6. This is for public hearing tonight. No action is necessary by the council tonight. Bids will be taken by the various lenders through June the 2nd, and we would be awarding the bonds at the July 1st meeting, assuming we get a successful rate, and at which time Mr. Day may very well be in attendance for that meeting. But tonight, by law, we are required to have a public hearing.
Mr. Kelly, before we open the public hearing, let me ask a point of clarification also. We are limited by law in terms of how much bonded debt and so forth we are permitted to take on. Can you comment briefly in terms of how much debt we have at the moment, what we're permitted to take on, and how we currently stand in comparison to those limits?
In the general fund, there currently is approximately $1.3 million in general obligation bonds. The debt cap that the state and the Virginia Constitution allows is 10% of the assessed value of the real estate that's located within the town. That would put our debt borrowing capacity at a little over $70 million, of which we've only got $1.3 million in general fund debt. So there's considerable room there to borrow additional funds. I will point out, based upon our auditors, that we are pretty much an exception to the rule in this part of the country and how low our debt is. I would also point out that in the sewer department, which are revenue sharing bonds, which does not count toward this, there is approximately $11 million, a little over $11 million that is for plant upgrades. But I would also point out to you with regard to one of those bonds, and Mr. Smith's back there, but it was one of those that it was an offer we couldn't refuse. It's 0%. So for $10 million.
Okay. So the proposed bond issue that we're looking at really does not specifically endanger us as a town nearing our limit of our borrowing capacity or anything of that sort?
No.
Okay. Before I open the hearing, does anyone else have any points of clarification they wish to ask Mr. Kelly or any of our staff? Okay. Hearing no questions from the staff, I will declare the public hearing to be open at the present time. If there is anyone present with us this evening who wishes to address the council regarding the proposed bond issuance that has been described to you, they're welcome to come forward and speak to the council right now. Again, if there is anyone here tonight who wishes to address the council regarding this matter, they are welcome to come forward at the present time. I will note there does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the council regarding the proposed bond issuance. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. Okay. Any further comments from the council? Okay. Thank you very much. And again, we will look to see this on our July agenda.
That's correct.
Okay. Our next item is the second reading of an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, proposing a budget for the town of Abingdon, Virginia, and to make appropriations for the current expenses of the town and to fix the tax rate upon real and personal property, fix all other local tax rates and fees and rates on utility services for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013, and ending June 30th, 2014. Mr. Kelly, would you care to comment about this, or have I missed something?
Mr. Mayor, I believe you missed F1.
Well, let me go back to F1. It's been that kind of day, folks, and if you'll excuse me, I think it probably is appropriate to deal with F1 first, and thank you. All right, the first item that we have for second reading tonight is an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to repeal, amend, and reenact Part 2, Chapter 14, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 1, Section 14.1 through 1457 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia. Again, this is our second reading, and Ms. Eisenhower, if you will reacquaint us with what we are proposing to act on again tonight, I'd appreciate it. And we have Mr. McLaughlin with us as well.
We do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, very briefly, this ordinance or adoption of this ordinance would encourage us to adopt the updated Uniform Maintenance Code and would enable the town to comply with current sections thereof and enable our Code Compliance Department to better enforce our Code of Ordinances. As a result, the Legal Department would recommend adoption of this amended ordinance this evening. And for other information?
Anybody?
Any comments, Mr. McLaughlin?
No, just here to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of either Ms. Eisenhower or Mr. McLaughlin? I think we noted that it showed a remark. It was a definite improvement. What was proposed in terms of giving us the tools that we needed to manage issues of blight and other problems within the town. I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move that we repeal, amend, and react Part 2, Chapter 14, Building and Building Regulations, Article Number 1, 14.1 through 1457 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia.
Okay. And a second, please. We have a motion and a second to adopt on the second reading the ordinance that has been described. I won't recite it all again. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. And that brings us back to, for the second time, to an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, proposing a budget for the town and fixing a tax rate upon real and personal property, fix all other local taxes and fees and rates on utility services for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013 and ending June 30th, 2014. Mr. Kelly, would you care to comment on this particular ordinance and budget proposal?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public, this is the second reading. The council has previously to tonight had a public hearing on this matter at the last meeting. In addition, in working through the budget, the Abingdon Town Council has had occasion on March the 20th, March 21st, March 27th, March 28th, and April 17th to review and discuss the various items set forth in the budget to make sure that if there were any changes to be made, that they were made. At the last council meeting, the council voted on first reading to adopt the budget as presented. Tonight's reading is the second reading. I will very briefly point out once again that this year's 2013/2014 fiscal year budget in the general fund is $17,822,450. It is a balanced budget, and there are no rate or tax increases that are reflected within that budget in order to make it balanced. As I pointed out in one of the prior items that we discussed, there are funds that are being borrowed to make this budget balanced, to carry out some of the capital improvement plans, as well as use of reserve money to see that this budget is carried out. In addition to the general fund, there is a sewer fund budget for 2013-2014, which totals $3,196,587. It is a balanced budget as well. There are no anticipated increases in tax and user fees within this budget. I will point out to you that this year's sewer budget is significantly less than last year's sewer budget, primarily because we had the West Interceptor project, for which we had $2.124 million in borrowed funds that will be closing out. And as a result, you will see a budget that's about $2 million less than it was last year. With that said, I would request that the council adopt this budget to take effect on July the 1, 2013.
It may have slipped by me, but did you state what the tax rate will be, or the proposed property tax rate and personal property tax rate?
The tax rates for the town of Abingdon will be the same as they were last year. And let me find my rate charge here. It's probably right here.
I believe it's 28
cents per hundred on real estate.
Yeah, it's 28 cents per hundred on the real estate and 25 cents on the personal property.
Okay, thank you. And,
I'm sorry, 55 cents on
Yes, sir.
personal property.
And you've indicated...
I gave Mark a heart attack back then.
Yeah. I think you indicated that it was the same rate as last year. I believe it's the same rate for about the past 10 years, has it not?
It's been that rate as long as I can remember, and I've had several council members who are no longer on the council say that it was never raised during their tenure on the council.
And I think the only time I can remember it being adjusted since I've been on council.
Reassessments,
I think we dropped it from 32 cents to 28 about 10 years ago. We've been very fortunate in terms of being able to manage our resources the way that we have. Does anybody have any further questions of Mr. Kelly or regarding this matter? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve on second reading, the balanced budget as presented for the fiscal year 13-14.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the budget as presented on the second reading.
And would that be to take effect on July 1, 2013?
2013. Absolutely.
All right, in 2014, right? Or 13, excuse me, the years are running together. Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. If you'll call the roll, please, Ms. Rosenbaum.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Our next item, we have a request from the firm of Hickok Farm, Brown & Garcia, CPAs based here in Abingdon, regarding the West Main storm drain matter. And come forward, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, my name is Jim Fern. I have with me my partners, David Brown and Juan Garcia. Tom Hickok couldn't make it. He's traveling tonight from a wedding, and he's out of state, and he won't be here tonight. In 1985, Tom Hickok purchased property at 984 West Main Street, where our current CPA office is located. This was, at the time when it was county property, is about 200 yards from the old town line before the annexation in 1986. Behind our property is a easement, a drainage way that runs behind our property from the Exxon station where the red light is, behind there, all the way back behind the current Sam Snead building, where there's two pipes that takes that water under Main Street over to where the Sharwood Shopping Center is. Now, this easement was before you all annexed in '86. This easement was a VDOT easement, maintained, and the adequacy of that easement was the responsibility of VDOT. Then the year after that, in 1986, the town annexed, all around the town, but they annexed, and before I go to that annexation, the drainage area for this drainage easement that goes behind our property is the west side of the college, all the west side of the college, around by the two hotels, the McDonald's, the filling stations, the mini marts, up to Dutton Wagner, back around from Dutton Wagner, Allison's Restaurant, then across the street, where People Incorporated is, the fairgrounds, down from where Pioneer is, Pioneer Chevrolet is, all the way up to the red light there. Then the water comes across the road and comes in behind the Exxon there, and then down behind there to behind our place into Sam Sneed's, and then it comes back across the road again to the other side to drain all that. So you can imagine the drainage, that's the storm drainage from that whole area. Now, and that was maintained by the state before the annexation in '86. In '86, the town annexed quite a bit of property, but on the west side of town, they annexed pretty much that same area, okay, that I just described, this drainage easement. And I left for you all's packets a annexation ordinance, and I hope y'all had a chance to read it. To me, this annexation ordinance was the commitments that the town made to the citizens of the annex area, the people, the property owners of the area that they was going to annex. It's very detailed, and it explains what the town was going to do. And as I read this, I couldn't help but to think that, you know, where would you start to do this? And I came to the conclusion that you would start by finding out what responsibilities became yours as a result of this annexation, okay? And something happened in '86 after this annexation, because you all assumed the responsibility and the collection of taxes for this area, but this drainage easement that became the town's responsibility through the annexation was missed. It wasn't for 11 years the town didn't know that this drainage easement that had been the responsibilities of VDOS is no longer their responsibility. It became the town's responsibility at the time of annexation, and the town was not aware of it until 11 years later, and we'll get into how they found that out in just a minute. Okay? So it was so that drainage easement, you know, became the town's responsibility, pretty much. But the town didn't know it until 11 years later. And if you all would look at the annexation, I just wanted to point out one thing. It's under Section 2, number 1, and it says, the territory adjacent to the town which is sought to be annexed is now undergoing substantial growth and development, and the activities therein are expanded rapidly. That was in the '86 annexation. So you can imagine on the west side of town, I'm sure it was on the other side of town, on the west side of town, that was put in your all's annexation as what you all saw for the area that y'all annexed. Well, you got to imagine the construction that was going on 11 years. Add 11 years to this annexation ordinance for the development that has been going on in the west side of town, the West Main Street side of town, and you can see the asphalt that was laid down for concrete, for parking lots, rooftops for buildings. The drainage, you can imagine, would increase significantly. So then we come 11 years later, and I guess the final nail in the coffin was when in 1997, 11 years after the annexation, Sam Sneed bought the property where his tire store is located, and he started construction in 1997. Well, with the town not knowing there's an easement there that goes through his property and takes the water out through those pipes, Sam Sneed's deed and title work did not disclose that easement either. So when he submitted his plans for construction to the town, there was, the town had no idea that there was an easement back here, you know, that was the town, you know, the town's easement or the town's responsibility to make sure that stayed open. So that Sam Snead's plans was to extend those pipes across his property boundary and fill in all of his land up to the road front, the road level. And he began to do that. And that's when, in July of '97, after he had done that, there was the first flood in 1997, in July. And the flood encompassed the 3 properties west of Sam Snead's property. There's 3 properties. Ours is the middle one, the Old People Incorporated property, and then the property next to it, in between Sam Snead's and our CPA office, got severely flooded and damaged, and it took some while, but we rebuilt. And then again, a flood came in 1999, April of '99, same thing happened. We used our bottom floor before the second flood. We used our bottom floor, had 8 offices in it. And there was 4 foot of water that inundated the whole area. So that's what happened as a result of the Sam Snead being able to encroach on the easement and fill in there. That caused that. After the second flood in '99, the town required him to remove all that fill, open up that easement. The town found out at that time that that was their easement that they were responsible for, and they started doing stuff like they put a pond in the middle of the easement to slow down the water, did some other things to try to minimize what the flooding that would happen. And also after the flooding, the town also started a feasibility study as to what can be done to correct that problem. That feasibility study started around 2000, 2001. It was completed around 2004. I also attached to y'all's agenda the council minutes to the December 6, 2004 meeting of the town council, where the actual firm that did the study presented their findings. And there was 8 alternatives were developed for analysis that would achieve the objectives that was set forth to fix the flooding issue. They recommended an alternative 1 at a cost of about $3.2 million. So in 2004, almost 10 years ago, the feasibility study was done. It went to preliminary engineering designs, and it was moving forward. But that's 10 years ago, and nothing's been done. The project that was determined to be the most alternative project was decided 10 years ago. Funding was started to be received after 2004. There's $2.8 million of funding set aside to take care of this drainage problem on the west side of town. That $2.8 million has been set aside for 10 years, sitting there. I mean, not 10 years, I'm sorry, 5 years, excuse me. It's been sitting there for 5 years. It's because they put about $500,000 a year. It got up to $2.8 million. This is all federal money. No town money, no state money. This is all federal money that has been set aside for about 5 years. Then that funding dried up, and that money's been sitting there for the last 5 years waiting. Okay? in 2004, after y'all did the feasibility study, this project also became the number one project that the town had on its books with VDOT. Okay. $2.8 million has been sitting there for 5 years. Now we go to the current days, and we've got a picture up of this is what happens at our offices. Sometimes it's twice a year, sometimes it's once a year, sometimes it may be 2 years before it happens. But it's a continuous thing that happens and occurs. There's about 2.5, it's up on about the second step of those steps in the back.
Sir, what year were these photographs taken?
Those were taken in 2011,
Okay.
about 1.5 years ago. I think it's August of 2011, sir.
Okay, thank you.
There's about 2.5 feet of water. Now, if you see you can see where the siding and where the sort of the concrete and the siding, we have 4,000 square feet of usable office space on the other side of where that concrete is. Okay, that's where our offices used to be before the two big floods occurred and wiped the basement out. So when we rebuilt after the '99 flood, all of our office space is on the top level. All that bottom space, we've got some storage down there, but it's not used for, it could be used for office space. There could be a back door put in and windows put in around there, and we could open that up for office space. We're growing to the point that we need that.
Okay.
Right now we have moved our bookkeeping department of 3 to 4 people over to where into the Old People Incorporated office, the West Side offices building. That's where they're located now. So that's the issue. So I guess what I'm here today is to ask the town council is, 10 years, our first flood was almost 15 years ago. Our second flood was almost 13 years ago. The project's been on the board for 10 years. There's $2.8 million of funding been there for 5 years. And I guess the question is, when is something going to be done?
Sir, Mr. Fern, let me make a couple of comments. And I'll say, first of all, that there's some pieces of your presentation that I found useful tonight. There's some bits of the history that I was not fully aware of because I certainly was not here, when those floods occurred. But there's a couple of things that, that I think we need to be realistic about. One of which is that you are correct. I think, the $2.8 million has been set aside. It has been set aside for this specific project. And I would note that it is there. It has not been used for anything else. We are starting the process to build sidewalks and so forth here tonight. We're borrowing money to do those sidewalks, and we haven't spent the $2.8 million that has been set aside. The proposal that was presented by Pete and Bortz in 2004 was a fairly complex and expensive engineering solution to a problem that had a relatively simple solution. But VDOT at that time, their policies wouldn't permit the type of solution that we are working on these days. The sad reality was that the proposal that was developed by Pete and Bortz was not something that could ever be realistically put into place. VDOT developed a number of plans, put them into their 6-year plan. For actual implementation, this was certainly on the top of the list of the 6-year plan for the town of Abingdon. But they found that the rapidly increasing costs of materials, particularly petroleum-based products, created a situation where money could not be set aside fast enough within budget limitations to ever to compensate for the rapidly increasing cost. So the gist of it was that proposal that was developed by Pete and Bortz really wasn't going to happen with the money that was available. So we moved on to another, solution that I think is a realistic one that I think our council is very much committed to trying to make happen, because, we did have a settlement with the town, with all the parties involved that went back, I think, to about 2004, when things were finally released and written up, where the town, the Snead Company, and the Commonwealth of Virginia compensated your firm for the losses that had occurred, as a result of, that particular flood. I think we all recognize that it is in everyone's best interest to resolve this thing, and I have to admit, 10 years is a long time to be waiting, to see something resolved on that. But I can tell you that I think we are committed to this, and we are pushing VDOT as rapidly as that slow boat can be pushed to actually, come forward with this. That is federal money that we are describing, but it's also money that basically, if it came to the town, would be part of our resources, money that we could utilize for, a variety of projects, but we've left it in the pool there as a sign of our commitment to resolving this particular, issue that you have. And, we do think it's important, because we also recognize this flooding can't occur again. It's one of those things, we've been fortunate that it hasn't happened, but I do feel that we are very definitely committed to this. We have asked Mr. Kelly just sort of to be the person who works with you folks on this. We find that it's best if we speak with one voice, allow him to handle the negotiations, discussions, and so forth on this, to see if we can find a an equitable solution. And I know you gentlemen have proposed a couple of things which I think we are willing to consider, and there may be something there that we could look at, but I'm not sure that I'm prepared to make any further comments or anything else tonight. Does anyone here wish to comment, or Mr. Kelly or Ms. Eisenhower, anyway?
Mr. Mayor, I would just comment, because I had indicated in an email to Mr. Fern that I was anticipating a letter that would be coming from Matthew Cox at VDOT, and I don't believe I've provided them with a copy of that letter yet, but it's in the council packet. And basically, I asked them to set forth in writing that they were committed to moving the project forward. They have indicated that they are in the preliminary engineering phases as we speak. Anticipate that the survey will be completed by July of this year. The hydraulic analysis will begin in August and should be completed in November. And we expect to post a willingness for a public hearing in March of 2014, and will thereafter move forward with the authorization for the right-of-way phase in August of 2014. Now, when they move forward with the right-of-way phase, that would be the actual acquisition of the property. And there is still yet work that will have to be done beyond that in terms of building whatever DCR tells us we've got to build. But that would, at least in August of 2014, when that acquisition phase is to take place, that would at least get you all, I think, out of the danger of any further flooding down there, and the ability to move on to a different location or stay there for a temporary period of time until we come up with a plan of what we're going to do.
Mayor, the December 6, 2004 Town Council minutes that you all have in front of you, the evaluations section there from Mr. Peeds says there's 8 alternatives were analyzed that would achieve the objectives. One of those alternatives is what's being proposed now.
Right.
Well, my question, why is it took 10 years?
It's my understanding the VDOT regulations didn't permit us to pursue that obligation 10 years ago. And, it was a sensible approach, it was a logical approach, it was a cost-effective approach. It was a straightforward approach, but it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kelly, I think it has been just in the very last less than a year that VDOT has concluded that they could actually pursue the option that we're looking at now.
That is correct. They've had to go back up the totem pole to the Federal Highway Administration. They've had to jump through the hoops with DCR to make sure that an acceptable modification could be made. The original called for plan, if I recall, was very substantial and involved a lot of land work that would have had to have been done. And now, with the preliminary indications from DCR and the Federal Highway Administration, a modified plan can be done that, along with some other things, which I hope you will recognize that we have diligently tried, at least. I know at least since I've been here, and probably even perhaps beyond when I was here, to go out and maintain that channel, to keep an eye on it, to make sure that it's clear from obstruction, and to even when you all get water on the driveway, to send crews out with the jet truck to try to spray off everything so that it's very usable to you. I know that doesn't solve your
Right.
problem that you're here for tonight, but I do want you to, I want to go on record as saying, I've said this to you and Tom and your partners on several occasions, I stand committed to pushing the folks at VDOT to carry out this project. I believe the council is behind me in wanting to see that project is carried out. I can't speed up the process, though. I can only do the best that I can, and I'm following up with them as often as I can, and you stay on top of me pretty regularly so that I know I have to be up to date with what's going on.
I think Delegate Johnson has made it abundantly clear and used what level of good office he has available to him and influence to further make it clear to the VDOT that this thing needs to be resolved, and he had every desire to see it resolved before he left office. But the process that is defined by law makes it clear that nothing happens in a particularly timely or fast manner. It just doesn't.
I guess my thought is if we could fix this problem, we got plenty of room to grow into, that we wouldn't have to relocate and to build, somewhere else. Y'all giving us an alternative that for our purposes, this is an ideal location on the west side of town. And the $2.8 million that had been set aside for 5 years, that's I think the construction cost is about 4.2, 4.5. So there's not that much to have to come up with to take care of the project that was originally designed 10 years ago.
Well, that project is no longer, I don't know what the price, remember exactly what we said the price was 10 years ago, but it's no longer that price.
Yeah.
And again...
Well, it says $3.2 million in 1994. That's on y'all's town council minutes.
Okay, that was 1994 and 2004, and I can assure you that we've had discussions with the fellows at VDOT, for example, about Exit 17.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposedly only, it was a $110 million project. We were only $10 million shy of having enough money to rebuild Exit 17, and all of a sudden that money wasn't there anymore, and it was the same situation that we've described tonight, that the actual cost of the materials in the building was increasing faster than money could be accumulated for it within the current state budget parameters.
Okay.
And
yeah, and I agree with you. If y'all were waiting on the state or the federal government to come up with all the money, you're probably right. It probably would never get done. But a year and a half ago, the country club citizens came down here, and y'all as a council approved a project to fix their problem, whether y'all got any funding or not.
Yes, sir, and that cost of that project, I think, was around $250,000. You know, it's not $3.8 million or $5 million or anything else. Do you have any?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
If I can ask, or do you want me to wait?
No, you can ask your question.
Well, and obviously I wasn't here way back in 2004, but I thought these were VDOT monies, but I guess they were federal highway dollars sent to VDOT.
It flows through VDOT. So
Through
it's
VDOT.
federal money that gets channeled through the state government.
But it's state money now, it won't go away. I guess that's the question I have.
Well, it could go away.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been told that this money could go away.
Well, and the reason I ask is my prior days I dealt with federal dollars, and they all have expiring dates on them. So the question I would have of these federal highway dollars is there an expiration date on the funds? And I guess, Mr. Kelly, I would look into that if I were you.
We asked that question when Delegate Johnson was here, and I believe Mr. Cox and company indicated that those funds could go away at some point in time, but right now they're committed for the project.
Does anybody else have any further comments or questions?
I would ask if, I would go to the feds and ask what the year the funds would expire. Because Delegate Johnson's at the state, and just to be sure, the money won't go away, because there's 5-year money, there's 3-year money, there's X-year money, which means it doesn't expire. So I would look into that.
Okay.
Maybe call the congressman's office, they can get the answer pretty quick.
Mr. Fern, I feel confident that you gentlemen will continue to have discussions with Mr. Kelly. We agreed tonight that we started out with a 10-minute discussion, and I think we're up to about 40 minutes. And, you know, we're not going to be able to resolve your problem tonight, but I certainly understand your position, I think. And again, I'm confident Mr. Kelly will work with you, and he'll be in communication with us about it. And if we can find, you know, an equitable solution somewhere along the way, we're happy to seriously entertain it.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. It's been useful. Okay, our next item is consideration proposal submitted for the town's liability insurance coverage. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall, this
You missed it. Oh, okay.
No, for once I was on target.
I have an extra one in my packet.
Okay.
If you'll recall, council had basically adopted a policy that with regard to its liability insurance, it would go out to bid every 3 years. We did this 3 years ago, at which time the town's insurance coverage had been with CSE through Harleysville for many, many years. We went out to bid, and at that point in time, the Virginia Municipal League offered us the best price for our coverage. Given that this was the third year of the coverage with VML, we hired our consultant, Sam Rosenthal, to put together the RFP to go out to bid again. The RFP was submitted to some of the local providers here, CSE being one, as well as to VML and to VACO. CSE contacted me early on in the game and indicated that they did not feel that it was in their best interest to spend the time in light of the losses that we had occurred over the course of the past 3 years to put together a package. They were hopeful that they would be able to do that the next 3 years when we went out to bid again. The bids that we received that came back were from the Virginia Municipal League and VACO, which is similar to VML but for counties and cities. The VML bid was $127,918. VACO was $123,568. However, in running the analysis of the two coverages. We discovered that there are a couple of things that VML offered that VACO did not that was extremely important. Number one was there was $10,000 in medical payment coverage offered by VML. VACO offered $5,000. There was no deductible for public official or law enforcement liability. And there was, and this one is one that really impressed me, there was $1 million of uninsured motorist coverage offered by VML. Last time when we contracted with VML, they did not offer uninsured motorist coverage. And you may recall at that point in time, I told the council that was a concern of mine that CSE had provided us with uninsured motorist coverage, but VML did not provide that coverage. They now provide $1 million of uninsured motorist coverage, and VACO does not provide that coverage at all. As a result, and in alignment with Mr. Rosenthal's recommendation, I am recommending that the council authorize me to renew the policy with VML. We've been very satisfied, at least from the staff standpoint, on all the claims that we have had that they've paid out on. And the council may be aware of one very substantial claim that we had relative to Creeper Trail number 7 that was paid out without any problems. In addition, there have been many other minor claims that we have received. The one thing I would request, and Mr. Rosenthal notes in his recommendation, is that the council should consider raising its base premium from $5 million to $10 million. That is only an additional $3,705 per year. And if council would go along with that, I would recommend that you authorize me to enter into the renewal contract with VML. That total would be $131,623, which is a difference of $5,397 from the current rate that we are paying. But in light of the claims that have been paid out over the course of the past 3 years, this is, in my mind, pretty phenomenal.
Questions? Or
I only have one question, and I know you said it was an uninsured motorist, but does it also include underinsured motorist?
Yes.
Because usually it's a combination of the both. Okay.
Okay, other questions, or I'll entertain a motion? Don't be shy.
I'll entertain a motion to go with the VML for their insurance.
Would your motion include increasing the base rate to the $10 million?
Yes.
Okay. Is it-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to renew our insurance with the Virginia Municipal League Insurance Program, increasing our base rate to $10 million. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Baird?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, and I will ask for clarification. There was, it was pointed out to me by Councilman Humphreys that I think on at least one of the drafts of agenda perhaps that were sent out, there was originally an item, consideration of renaming of Johnson Street that was requested by Ms. Pokey Harris, who is our civil defense coordinator, if that's not the appropriate word, or emergency services coordinator for Washington County.
The original agenda that went out, I think.
Yeah.
That's the only one I got.
Yeah. Is that something that we need to address tonight? Or?
That, I believe, is Mr. Jackson still here? I believe that's something to be taken up in at the July meeting, because it involves having to submit an application for street closure prior to it coming before the council.
And if I may comment, the draft agenda that was sent out the middle of last week was highlighted in yellow because I wasn't sure that item was confirmed.
Okay.
So the regular agenda was included in with the packet.
And my iPad just went out, so that's why I did go to my phone and my
That's
backup.
okay.
All
Sorry.
right. Okay, very good. Okay, so we'll look for that on our July agenda. Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. I would propose at this point, before going into the series of, well, let me just look at this. We have one item that was downstairs that we shifted up to here, which was discussion of steps to increase our voter turnout. Would you care to take that up before unfinished business? Mr. Kelly, what's your preference?
I'd be happy to discuss that at whatever time. I'm going to have Ms. Rosenbaum pass me the information.
Okay, why don't we let you have that information, and then let's go ahead with the other items on unfinished business, and you'll have an opportunity to sort of get everything together in the meantime. Although I will ask you to comment, first of all, on consideration of adjustment of additional appropriation. Thank you to the Veteran Memorial Park Board. Mr. Kelly, if you care to comment about that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall at the May meeting, toward the end of the meeting, which was a very lengthy agenda, we were using up some of the contingency funds that council had remaining, and one of the...
Again, thanks to Ms. Eisenhower and Ms. Kingsley. Absolutely.
Well, I know that she got a great deal of experience to manage this on the Country Club Estate.
Correct. So, I certainly don't want to make a guarantee, but I'd love to, I'm looking forward to next next month's council meeting to report back on this project, and hopefully we can get this one started very soon.
Very good, sir. And, okay, well, that's also, I won't recite the difficulties or complexities of building a sidewalk and why it's so complicated, but very good. Any other questions regarding this one? Okay, and now you can, I know that you're equally excited about the replacement of trestle number 7 on the Virginia Creeper Trail.
I am excited about it. We do have contracts signed on this one as well, and bonds in place for the work. I am currently scheduled or waiting to hear back from the contractor as far as dates within this week or hopefully early part of next week to schedule a pre-construction conference with the contractor and their subcontractors that are going to do the grading and the actual fabrication of the trestles. So after we have this pre-construction conference, we'll have the green light to go on that project as well. So.
Have we thought about a groundbreaking ceremony or anything like that?
I know Mr. Kelly mentioned that to me, that would be desirable for the council members, and we can certainly schedule that, and it's hopefully going to be soon.
Very good. Okay, well, I'm certainly pleased to hear the progress that we're making on that. And does anybody else have any questions about that project?
No questions, but it might be rain part of the day. It looks like it might rain here soon. Might be a good time to call Smith Brothers.
Right. Catch them when they're not putting hay.
It can be haying, that's right.
Yeah, it's usually when they can sign.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
All right.
And I would go out there right now to get
Okay. All righty, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, I see that they're ready to proceed and talk with us about an update on the Urban Pathways project.
Sure. Last month, the team of Mr. Howard, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Worley, Mr. Dew, myself, and Ms. Moody met and reviewed the proposals for the Urban Path design. Four teams were chosen: Barge Wagner, Anderson Associates, CHA, and Thompson Litton. Those 4 will be interviewed next Monday and Tuesday mornings, splitting it up 2 and 2 each day, and we'll have lunch after that each day and talk about the morning's interviews and decide on a team on Tuesday, and then relay that to council in July for your approval to award the proposal.
Okay, any questions?
And if I could touch on the 2 items down, the planning commission member, we have yet to interview our 4 applicants. So.
I'm ready to move on it.
The clerk asked if we were going to do something. I told her I didn't know. We might need a closed session, so I don't know.
I have the motion ready.
Okay, well, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So
Just
let's
wanted to
sort
pass
of
that
deal with
along.
the agenda as we have it laid
Okay.
out. Thank you very much. Okay, and that brings us to an update on the feasibility study for the Conference Center Hotel. Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we have not had any further contact with the group of individuals who expressed a desire to do the pro forma. I would anticipate, at least based upon my last discussions with them, that will be coming in short order, and probably within the next month or two, we would have something to report back to the council.
Okay. Questions? We have an update on the West End Interceptor project. Mr. Smith, this may be, I'll bet it's possibly the last report you have to give us on this particular topic, although I could be wrong.
Mayor, morning members, the council, that's what I thought last month. There is little that remains to be completed yet. We have some surface restoration to be completed there, and it seems like the paperwork is taking a long time, but we're still trying to work through that. A few negotiations that we're trying to work ourselves through, and some things with DEQ that we have to take care of, but we can still, there is a finish date here pretty soon, and that's about it. Not a whole lot accomplished since last time.
Is it active right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Underground is working.
All right. Very good, sir. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to matters not on the agenda, and I would propose at this point in time that we take up, first of all, the topic of the item we had scheduled originally for the work session, which was increasing voter turnout for the town council elections. And this was an item that we had committed ourselves to addressing some time ago and became involved in the annual budget process. And Mr. Kelly, you've prepared us an outline, and would you care to address it at this point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I do want to offer my sincere appreciation to Cecile for helping and get this put together. Basically, there are multi-facets of what we would like to do. One of which is create a banner that, assuming we can get our banner poles fixed across Cummings Street, we would be able to fly a banner that would state when election day is and where it is. There's a template there. Cost of that banner is about $975. Then we are proposing that we can purchase some various yard signs in close proximity to the town hall that are more noticeable than the ones that have been put out in years past, that would indicate with an arrow where to go to vote, as well as some leaflets that have the same information that could be put on various public buildings and businesses throughout town. There is a small banner that we are proposing that the cost is about $450 that could be hung on the side. We think on the side of this building is the better location to hang it as opposed to the front of the building, since the voting takes place downstairs. In addition, there would be press releases and advertisements that will be placed into the Washington County News and Bristol Herald Courier. I would also like to point out to you that we have already placed on the town website, some of the council members, I think, have visited those. There are 3 nicely put together videos that my colleagues and I at VLGMA put together, along with our initiative for the first week of April as local government education week in the school systems. And again, we would want to, especially since April 1st, or the first week of April, is in close proximity to the election, we would definitely want to get into the school systems and hand out some flyers and what have you at that point in time. We think that these measures would provide greater exposure to the public to attend the elections than they have in the past. And I'm a firm believer that that school system element is one of the crucial elements. And I know a couple of my council members, I believe maybe Mr. Berry and Ms. Lowe, who is not here, has actually worked with some Boy Scouts. Is that correct, Jason? Boy Scouts to utilize some of the information that we have provided in terms of educating them on the process. We've got an election year, I guess, coming up in the next fiscal year, so we would like to have these employed for that next election year.
Okay. Are there other thoughts or comments? And Mr. Macbeth, you're with us this evening, and if you have comments or others here have comments, we'll entertain them. We have, an outline that's been prepared, and this is a beginning point and not necessarily an ending point in terms of how we might go about, trying to increase the voter turnout. One thing you haven't listed there that I think is a key element of this, that I know every election cycle there are people that go door to door telling folks that there's an election coming up, and I think there are several of us here that have been actively involved in those teams in the past and are possibly going to be involved with them in the future. But election turnout, for our town elections is low, and I will tell anybody who's interested that there's no doubt that the local elections, local government is the level of government that has the most impact on your daily life. Whether you feel safe in your town, whether you have potholes in your streets, whether your toilet backs up from sewage problems, whether your children are well educated, all those things are really functions of local government, and local government is the level of government that each person can have the most direct impact on of any level of government. And folks are not shy about contacting and telling all of us here how they feel about it, and we take all this very seriously. But the more people that we can have involved in the process and understanding it, we're all better. Mr. Macbeth, do you have any comments you care to make here? Because you helped remind us of the importance of this issue.
And while Mr. Macbeth is getting ready to talk, well, it'd be remiss if we didn't remind people that if they want, the Washington County election will be this year for supervisors.
Yes, it'll be in November, and it'll be a very important election.
Yeah, you have 3 districts, Wilson, Taylor, and Jefferson district are up this year. I want to thank the board for the town council for listening to me the other day and taking this on. We've been monitoring, as far as the turnout, it's not been very well, and we'd like to be able to find ways of getting more people involved into the politics and getting more people involved in their town. That way, everybody has a buy-in to it. Mm-hmm. And they have a say into it. And this is one of the key things that this is what our country's all about. Mm-hmm. I hope to be able to see if I can get a copy of that. So
sure.
I already have one.
I thought you would. Well, thanks very much. And I do have another thing to do when we talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, we are definitely entertaining suggestions and ideas about how we can increase our voter turnout. And please feel free to contact our town manager, town clerk, or your town council representatives, on ideas that you think might be useful. And council, do you have any comments about these ideas or other things we want to offer at the present time? Mr. Barry?
No, Mr. Mayor, it was mentioned on here Facebook, but I just pulled up our town Facebook. We've got 3,803 likes, and obviously that's more than who shows up to vote. Now, I don't know if all these are town citizens, but I just make the point that Facebook's very important in today's world, no matter what age you are. And by the way, there's more people 55 and older using Facebook and active than people my age. And we have an older population around 45 to 50. So I would think, the more we could do with Facebook is only thing I'll say, the better we can reach our population. No, I'm just saying, the more we can use Facebook to reach our population.
You're on thin ice?
No, I'm just...
What was that age group again?
Well, I forget what it is. Well, Mr. Garrett could probably tell us, or we'll go to the census, but the average age of the citizens of the town of Abingdon is somewhere in the Yeah, 40s.
Yeah.
So I said 45 to 50, somewhere in that range.
Well,
And Facebook will tell you, Facebook users, I'm just telling you, we need to use Facebook.
Well, I'm sad to say that I'm one of these folks that haven't figured it out yet, and I have an account. There's lots of people that want to be my friend, and I kind of, you know, I just haven't. Well, I'm trying. But, you know, so okay. Again, we welcome ideas, and yes, and I think our social media representative has gone home for this evening, but I'll bet you she's capable.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to jinx us, but I think we'll get out of here by 7 o'clock.
You know, I think for once you may be right. Okay, all right. Moving right along here, we have other matters not on the agenda. And is there anyone here tonight, and I see Mr. Macbeth there, and we'll come back to this one, who wishes to address the council on topics that are not on the agenda? And I see Mr. Macbeth is back with us.
Yes, thank you. Richard Macbeth, 1139 Panorama Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. What I want to talk about today is about the King School of Medicine. There was a Freedom of Information Act that was put out for information that was about Tariq Sadiq on his pay and everything, and how much money is actually brought in. I don't know if you know that his annual salary is $250,000, and he's been paid to date of $85,500. He's had reimbursement expenses of $4,129.85, business expenses of $2,430.96 for mileage. On top of that, we have his advancements of funds, or I should say, well, let's put it this way. Cash contributions from June 1, 2012 to May 1, 2013. The only contributions is $200,000, and that is $100,000 from Virginia Tobacco, $50,000 from Town of Abington, and $50,000 from Washington County. As you notice, it's all public funds. There's no private funds involved. There's no business plan. Has everybody seen a business plan for this? Have we seen a business plan? As we can't find one. The question we have is, there's no also...
Excuse me, Mr. Macbeth,
Yeah.
you're using the term "we." Is there a we
I'm sorry, I
involved?
apologize. I.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
using it I today.
Okay.
The question I have is, what backing does the school, well, I should say, what protection do we have as citizens in Abington for if this doesn't go off, if this doesn't make it? There's been a lot of talk going around for, you know, the hard part of it is putting down residencies, because there's a lot of schools around here and they're filled up in residencies. King College pulled out. Why? No one's ever come back and said King. Nobody's putting money in, any alumni or anything else. You also have ETSU. They're kind of going into this not very strongly, because they got their own school. I mean, I like to see this happen, but the problem is there's no public fund. There's all public funds and no private funds, and there's nothing out there to protect us if it falls together. You also have the Virginia Highlands Community Colleges pulled out as far as their use of their schools, the buildings. So that 10 million or whatever the schools that they were going to provide, where's that going to come from now? So these are the things that I have questions for.
You're talking about the higher education center?
Yeah, higher education. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that we're in a position to address all those concerns.
No, but I mean, I just want
tonight.
to put it out there so you have more information than that you've been given before, because this information was not given out. It had to be given through a Freedom of Information Act to get the information, because it wasn't provided any other way. And I would be glad to give it to anybody that would like it.
Okay, again, I don't think we're in a position to discuss this at length tonight, but my impression, Mr. Berry, is that either by around September, we're going to know whether this thing's going to go or not.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and Rich, you and I can talk about all the details some later time, but all the things you've talked about has been shared with the Tobacco Commission, with their staff, their executive director, and the entire commission. I was going to save this to the comments, but since he brought it up, if you indulge about 2 minutes. Tarek Zadie did present the interim president to the Tobacco Commission last week to the Economic Development Committee. I was not there, but I understand the meeting went well. He presented all the latest details along with the total financial plan, the new business model under the new corporation, and the Economic Development Committee said, great work, great progress. The staff also said, great work, great progress, and they gave till September to come back and report. You're correct that the only money in the game right now, if you will, is public money, but there's been, when this project was transferred from King College to the new corporation, the state corporation, the Virginia Corporation, nonprofit, had to overcome a lot of, about 2 years worth of some activity and a lot of inactivity, so had to transfer the project from the Tobacco Commission, from King College to the nonprofit. Had to reorient a lot of people in the community. Since then, I'll just give you a few facts from last week's Tobacco Commission meeting. The Virginia Highlands Community College and Emory and Henry College have signed MOUs to explore further ways to partner with the school. East Tennessee State is very committed. I personally talked to President Nolan on numerous occasions. They are very committed to see the partnership expand and get the details of that partnership, which will be coming out in the next few months. There are several donors who have been talked to, large potential donors, and some corporations. That'll be forthcoming, but it's premature to be making announcements or anything like that. But you're right, so far there's only public monies, but there will be some private donations. So other than that, I can't go into too many other details, but there's progress being made. The last 6 months, more progress has been made than the prior 3 years. I tell people like Delegate Kilgore and others that if what's happened the last 6 months happened the last 3 years, I believe we would have a building built, we'd have the beginning of new students coming in and the operations underway. To your point on the higher education center, that is correct. They did pull out May of last year. But that has not stopped the efforts. That's not stopped the progress. So, and since then, ETSU's come on board, and then the other two institutions to explore. So, there's a lot of things going on, and there'll be more progress to be reported. So, I appreciate your comments. Stay tuned for more information.
The main concern I have is protection of the funds of Abingdon.
Well, the total extent of what we've expended in really cash-wise on this whole project and the time frame we've been involved is $50,000.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's $50,000.
It's $50,000, but it's not $500,000. It's not $5 million. It's a pretty modest investment in the scheme of things to move a project forward that has potential to have a very high return if it comes together. I don't think any of us are prepared right now to spend another $50,000 until we are satisfied that things are moving forward. But I'd also note that I feel like Tarek Zadie has provided a sense of reality to this thing and has his feet on the ground with this project in a way that has made me feel like that it actually stands a very good chance of coming together. And I'll have to say that over the previous 3 years, there'd be 1 week I think it'd come together. Then the next day it looked like it was down the tubes. It's been just a roller coaster that has strained everybody along the way. But at the moment, things I believe are moving along in a good direction. But we're cautious because we're dealing with taxpayers' money, and some of that money we help to, put into the budget from our own pockets when we pay our taxes. But we have to, I think we're being cautious about this, but we have to offer some level of encouragement. And at the moment, I think the willingness of the Quillen School of Medicine to participate in this is something that has brought more reality to it than anything that I can think of. That is a major accomplishment to convince them that this thing has potential.
Yeah, well, like I said, I would like to see this happen, but I'm very, very cautious, concerned about the extensive funds going out and nothing to back it right now. And there's no protections in there in case something falls through. We're kind of hung out there until...
We're not hung out that far, Mr. McBath. I mean, the reality of it is we've been very careful about, what financial investment we've made in this. We haven't given anybody a blank check.
Yeah.
We've been very, very cautious, and we have, Mr. Barry, who has served on the advisory, or excuse me, it's an actual incorporated board at this point in time. I'm very satisfied with the stewardship that he's exercising over this venture. I know Ms. Eisenhower and Mr. Kelly have put many, many hours trying to make sure that the town's interests were very definitely protected along the way, and nobody's handing out a blank check on this deal. We're very, very cautious.
That's all.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
two other comments. You probably already read about them, but the governor in his budget provided $250,000 for a planning grant, which will be flowing down through the town of Abingdon. It was earmarked to the town of Abingdon for $250,000 starting July the 1st of this year. And then the Appalachian Regional Commission has told us that if things went well with the Tobacco Commission, to come back to them on a $500,000 planning grant, which those are federal dollars. So again, it's all public monies, but it's the seed capital that you need to start a big venture. And no big company or even a medium-sized company has started without seed capital. And there'll be some private monies, I believe, that Mr. Zadie will get. Stay tuned. I mean, just hold on a little bit.
I know of one maybe out there.
Stay tuned. Be patient. Rome was not built overnight.
No.
And the reality is there's one other thing, and not to be disclosed yet, other than the board is discussing ways that the town and county, if this gets fully done, could be protected in the end. And I'll just say that for now, but there's things being discussed. So I'm watching it like it was, my personal money, because at the end of the day, this has to be done appropriately. We have to be good financial stewards. And so just trust us on that, and we'll do the right thing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here who wishes to address the council tonight on matters that are not on the agenda? Yeah, if you don't mind going to one of the microphones, we'd sure appreciate it. Okay.
I'll bring it to you, Ms. Copeland.
I just want to check with you all and see what you all are going to do about my water situation. I've been waiting for you to call or something, and it's still pouring down the road. And since you got Harold Hill out there, it's running more.
Well,
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not sure either. Mr. Dew, do you have any comments you'd care to make about it at the moment, or?
All I know is last time we had a conversation several months ago, I guess, at that time when the paving company for the Surface Authority project had come back through and paved the road to repair the trenches that were put in for the water line, the berm in front of Ms. Copeland's house had been knocked out. We replaced that berm, and I wasn't aware or hadn't heard that there was still a water situation.
Well, since they put that drain thing in there, it's a lot worse than what it was. And I hate to tell y'all, y'all have just about destroyed my brick wall. You'll be happy about that. But the wet, it's getting wet and all the moisture's coming out of it.
Mr. Kelly, could you and your appropriate staff revisit this with the Copenhavers? I'm like Mr. Dew, I thought we'd made headway on this, and there may be some...
We'll take a look at it. Mr. Mayor, I have to agree with John that we thought with the repavement, and I believe maybe some of the council members had even been over there and noticed that the repavement had taken place. We thought that had solved the issue, but we'll certainly go back over and we'll take a look at it. But
well, if you could just come down and put some more of that asphalt stuff to keep it out of, I can't hardly get into my house for the water. It's so deep now.
Like the berm, the little hump.
Yeah,
Okay.
When they refinished the road down there, when they put the water line in, they didn't put it back right.
Okay, well, we'll go out and look at that. That might be an easy fix.
And that should, the Service Authority should help us correct that, shouldn't they?
Well, I'm sorry to hear there's still problems, but thank you for bringing them
The
to our
road
attention.
looks nice, though.
Yeah, it looks good down there.
Okay. Well, thank you, and Mr. Kelly, if you will report back, if you fellows will, gentlemen, will report back to us on what you find, what we do there at our July meeting, I'd sure appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Mr. Copenhaver?
I'm just kind of trying to refresh my mind, because it seems like when y'all came down to the house, that y'all were going to do a study and y'all were going to put something in the budget and something was going to be done. And now it just seems like it's been passed over. I mean, my recollection was that y'all were actually going to come back with a plan of how to fix the whole corner. And now we're talking about a little more asphalt. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was thinking that y'all said you were actually going to fix it, not just put a Band-Aid on it.
Well, we were not finding very simple solutions to the problem, but again, all we can do for the moment is to have Mr. Kelly and Mr. Dew revisit this again. We're happy to have a look at it at our July meeting and have it on the agenda again and talk about it. And I'm sorry we haven't come up with what seems to be a satisfactory solution so far. Mr. Berry?
Mr. Mayor, and I think we visited, was it March? February, March, something like that, earlier this year. I thought we were going to have the staff look at the edge of the road from where United Way is back past your house and looking at trying to widen the front entrance of the street up the hill to, because Mr. Dew was out there to look at widening the street for when those wreckers go out of there and turn, they were driving up on the bank, which is the property of United Way. Was that ever looked at? Because I know that's what my takeaway, and the director of the United Way called me a couple days later and said, are y'all going to take our property? I said, well, things are being looked at, and that's the last I heard of it.
Well, what happened is we did go back out and look at it, but the Service Authority came back in. The road that had been torn up for the water line, and they resurfaced the road, and I think perhaps expanded the roadway some. I thought the berm was taken care of, but we will go back out and we'll look at the curves and the berming. But I did note that the road looked greatly improved when we were out there looking at it.
But it didn't expand the road toward the United Way, though, did it? I haven't been down there since we were out there.
I'm not sure if it expanded any of the road. The pavement is brand-new pavement, though, that's on the road, and then there should be a new berm that was in place on the roadway as well.
Well, I remember
what John referred to. We thought the problem had been solved.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We probably should revisit it.
All righty, and we'll have this on the July agenda, and we'll talk about it at that point. Okay? I'm sorry I don't have a good answer to you this evening, but we will revisit this thing. Are there others that wish to address the council matters this evening that are not on the agenda? Okay, I believe we have one other item. Mr. Kelly, would you care to introduce that to us regarding the proposed concept of fees for usage of town properties?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, for the past several years, special events have been increasing at a high rate throughout the year in the town. As a result, we already had an application for a special permit in place. We've since redrawn that form to make it more simplistic. But the one thing that we've noticed is that these events are eating into the cost of town staff and town equipment in the setup and the breakdown for these types of events. So we've set forth a fee schedule and a cost sheet that we would like to employ for each of these events. We have not set them extraordinarily high nor extraordinarily low. We did not want to get in a position with competing with other companies that rented chairs, tents, tables, things of that nature, trolleys, buses. But nonetheless, we have come up with a relatively simplistic fee schedule, which I presented to the council at the work session. I would like to employ this fee schedule on a regular basis, and I would like to bring it back before the council on a yearly basis to consider modifications if there's a need to increase or decrease the fees that are set forth within the schedule. But tonight, I would like for you to authorize me to employ a fee schedule for the use of town equipment, town employees, and town properties for special events. And this would apply to all special events that were non-town events. By non-town events, I mean those funded directly by the town council.
Are you proposing that we specifically authorize particular fees, or just allow you to perhaps implement a schedule somewhat at your discretion?
Well, I would like to have the ability to deviate. I have presented you with fees that we think are very reasonable, but I do think from time to time there may be a need to deviate from these fee schedules. In the event that I were to deviate from fee schedules, from the fees set forth on this schedule, I would certainly bring it to the council's attention.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kelly being one of my favorite deviants,
It's good to be an evening here.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize Mr. Kelly to employ the fee schedule as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and second to Mr. Kelly to implement the fee schedule that was presented for, and as well as utilizing his discretion regarding this matter, I'll bet.
Well, I want to amend my motion to include, that he can amend this at his discretion, and he's already made it and it's an intent to bring it to the council if he does that.
Okay, and again, we have a motion, and did we get a second?
Second
I'm
here.
sorry. To permit him to implement the proposed fee schedule somewhat and utilize his discretion as appropriate. He would bring it back to us once a year for review. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
Question, this would be effective immediately, correct?
Yes.
All right.
And then I would just ask that it be on our website.
All right, and both very, very good suggestions. And again, we're noting it would be effective immediately. Okay, any further comments? Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. All right, we have an item this evening on the, there is still an appointment to be made on the Planning Commission. I think there had been Mr. Jackson was here, there he is. Okay, there was, the Planning Commission was looking at interviewing some of the candidates. Council, do you wish to proceed with that? Do you wish to make the appointment? What's your pleasure on this item?
It's been a couple months since we've had the opportunity for that to transpire. Nothing has seemed to transpire so far, but we have someone that's come to the meeting and shown great interest, and I'm willing to make a motion if Mayor would recognize me for that.
I'll recognize you for that. We'll let you make your motion, and we'll see if we get a second, or if council wishes to perhaps not second at this point and go into, perhaps before we do that, I'll just ask the question, are you prepared, council, to deal with this item tonight? Do you wish to go into executive session?
I don't think there's really a big push to get somebody in this position. I mean, we've got enough members on there to conduct business as being a member of the Planning Commission. Our last plan was to get some interviews done, but
due to time restraints, he hadn't been able to do that. So, I mean, I don't really see we need to take action tonight.
Well, has it been because of time constraints or because people didn't show up?
No, for time restraints. I mean, it's just difficult getting them scheduled and getting enough of us together to actually talk to them.
Yeah, I thought there hadn't been very many people come in to do anything before. So how long, it's been like, yeah. Okay, so it's been like the 1st of April, so it's like been 60 days?
Dr. White went off at the end of April, that was the last meeting.
Right.
So we've had, I guess, May, yeah, the May meeting.
Yeah.
Just 2 weeks, the last week.
Was it May? Because
That's when Ramsey went off.
Right, because I know we discussed this prior to it because Ms. Lowe was here.
2 months ago.
So it's been 60 days, basically, instead of, it hadn't been 30 days, it's been 60 days that we've had an
Probably
opportunity.
prior to him going off. So
Y'all were trying to have somebody in
Right.
place when he left.
Yeah.
It was the April meeting we discussed it.
I'm hearing sort of a desire to perhaps try to see if these interviews could take place, but I would be to the point where I'm willing to act on it in July if whether or not the interviews have taken place. Would you be agreeable with that, Mr. Humphreys?
If that's y'all's desire, that's fine.
I guess I would say I support Councilman Humphreys in a way because I know that, I think he's alluding to a certain gentleman who's been here and showed interest, and he at least came to, I think, all of us in April and showed his interest. So I think that says a lot from my history on this council is I don't know too many volunteers for volunteer committees knocking at our door saying, can I serve, can I serve? So I see his point, but at the same...
The first one I've had, and also, a certified engineer as well as someone who has dealt with the water problems that we're getting ready to have to address vis-a-vis the state, since they're going to pass them down to us.
I guess I'll cut it half and half. I see his point, but I think we probably should put a deadline of no later than July and allow the staff to do the work they promised they'd do. So I'm with you, Mr. Humphreys, but maybe we should allow our staff to do their job, and if they can't do their job, then we need to take action no later than July.
Well, I feel certainly they can do their job, but that...
Well, I didn't insinuate they're not, but, I think I agree with the mayor.
That's fine. That's fine. I know that we have some gentlemen willing to serve, and I would just hate to, it's right.
Well, he may be the best candidate. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, but that time he might tell us to go bite it.
If that's the case, then perhaps taking no action would be appropriate. Okay, I'm hearing somewhat of a consensus that we'll allow this to move until July. Would that be?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, that brings us to council member reports, and Mr. Humphreys, shall we start with you?
If you want to. Most of these I wanted to mention downstairs. I'm sorry we didn't have the time to do that because but the first one I wanted to mention is I've had, and but a lot of these are just small complaints that I've had, but I've had 3 or 4 people call me about the pool hours. I inquired with Mr. Worley about the pool hours. He was very forthcoming in knowing exactly what was going on and what I was talking about. And I would just like for him to come up here and tell council, if he doesn't mind, about what the kind of the problems and the issues that he's having trying to fill some spots for the rec center.
Yes, I'll be happy to maybe shed a little bit of light. Ooh, that's loud. Basically, this year we've dealt with something that, as the town, we've never had to deal with in the past, and that is the Affordable Care Act has created a scenario where our part-time people are only allowed to work 28 hours. And we have adopted that policy with the town, which affects us having to hire enough staff to cover the amount of pool hours, and we're talking primarily the outdoor pool, and we've had to look at some changes this year. A lot of the area pools typically operate in the 12 to 6 time frame, and that's what we've adopted for the outdoor pool. In the past, we've opened it 11 to 6. We will operate Monday through Friday from 12 to 6. On Monday nights from 6 to 8, we have the members-only swim, so that will still go on. Saturdays has been the bigger change to adopt, and we have 8 to 10. The swim team is in the outdoor pool. We have a 10 to 12 pool party. Then we open to the public from 12 to 3:45, and then from 4 to 6, We allow them to go inside and swim if they choose, and we also, at 4 to 6, we have an outdoor pool party, whereas in the past, what we've had is the outdoor pool party has operated from 6 to 8. We've made that change for some safety reasons and all that, and basically have 12 to 3:45 is the open swim, and then Sundays from 1:30 to 6. So what we have to do is we have to adjust the hours to compensate for the number of staff that we're required through the Department of Health, the American Red Cross, and the Model Aquatic Health Code that we need to maintain with the pool numbers we have. If we only had 100 people coming to the pool, we could open all the time. We have 300 to 400 people coming on a daily basis to the outdoor pool, so we're required to have all the guards. We have a full complement of staff, and with only working 28 hours max, then we're having to we are still actively looking and working with Mr. Kelly to hire an additional 4 or 5 staff, part-time lifeguards, so that way once we have these in place, we will be able to extend our hours a little more. But right now, based on the number of staff that we have, the safety guidelines that we operate under, that's the hours that we operate with. It's pretty much 12 to 6.
So really, though, nighttime or not evening swimming like we've had in the past? Except for the one.
We will have a couple of those scheduled, but to have it as a regular weekly thing, we do not have that scheduled yet until we get these additional staff in place.
And what are some of the problems you think you might be having recruiting these people, recruiting the part-time lifeguards?
Well, one thing that we're dealing with, and it's affecting across the board of the town, is a lot of these smaller agencies are not under the directive of having to deal with the 28 hours because they do not have 50 full-time people working in their agency, so they're excluded for now under certain guidelines, and so they're working them 35 to 40 hours, whereas we can only offer them 28. So we're kind of competing against that in the market, and that's not just in other swimming facilities, but that's just at some restaurants or just in general business. So we're fighting with that a little bit. But we do have applicants coming in. We are interviewing and selecting the best candidates before. We're not just going to hire anyone. We want the best candidates because we want to provide the most safe environment for the patrons.
So you're going to have enough people to handle the swim meet? Because apparently we're
in great shape.
There was tons of people coming up there. So.
We are in great shape, yes. We're looking to be one of the biggest swim meets that we've ever held in the town.
And your staff will be able to cover all that.
Mm-hmm. We're in good shape there.
The Affordable Care Act, when does that go into effect, July 1st, or what is it?
This is a monitoring period right now that we're supposed to be basing our numbers on. It will actually take effect in July.
January 1.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
January 1, 2014.
It's not on a fiscal year, it's January 1 of next year. But anybody who is above that 30-hour threshold will be penalized immediately following January 1. So the state and most localities have already, and you have to have it's a look-back period.
6 months.
Of 6 months to be able to justify this. Now, the thing I would point out with Kevin, we've had a talk about this, and we have the positions available. They're budgeted for.
Correct.
So it's not like we're having to hire additional people. It's just a matter of getting kids or adults who are going to want to work under that 28-hour threshold. Now, he's referenced some other places that they're not adhering to that, and I don't know the answer to why they're not, other than my speculation. I had this conversation with Kevin earlier today, is that there are localities that have less than 50 employees, and therefore they don't have to comply with it. But because we have greater than 50, we're put in a position of having to comply. But he's got some great ideas of trying to not steal people from other places, but get those people who are working part-time at other places to come and work some hours for the town as well. which will get them.
And that has been a little bit of a success. We're doing a little cooperation with some other places, and, you know, if they've already went through background screens and all that, so I mean, we will still put them through our trial period and everything with them, but if they've already been employed somewhere else, then, and they're working 28 hours, you know, working 3 days a week somewhere else, maybe we can get them to come to work with us for 3 days a week. And I've been talking with some of the aquatic directors and parks and recreation directors in the area to select some of those candidates to invite them to come and look at us as a second position.
Yeah, there's going to be, at my upcoming VLGMA conference, there are 2 sessions that are devoted entirely to the Affordable Care Act, and I would also point out to the council that in your most recent VML magazine, there is an article about the Affordable Care Act. There is some speculation that this might be a short-lived act, but nonetheless, we've got to comply with it while it is in place.
In other words, you're referring to there may be some amendment to it to address some of these situations. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I do have more.
Go right ahead.
The second thing is, and this is also kind of directed at Kevin too. No, you can sit down. It's some positive comments that we've had about the senior citizen usage at the senior center and getting the older adults involved. And apparently it's been highly successful. I've gotten several calls. One of them, the most recent one, was from Connie Clay, who I went out and gave us a talk about, and Kevin had implemented several things, and they've been very positive, and there's more senior citizens, I think, taking classes and stuff than there probably has been in quite a while. So they were very complimentary on it and said thank you. So I should have told you that when you were up here. The other thing is, I wanted to ask about the trolleys. I thought they were going to start running already, and they have started running, and just wanted to check and see what was happening with those.
Well, in fact, the Veterans Day thing, part of the problem that we had there was they were being used by barter for their gala. So we had 2 events that had conflicted, and as I indicated, you got to get these forms in, but
weekends.
Two of the trolleys require a special certification because they have air brakes on it. Right now, we only have 2 drivers that have that certification. We're trying to pay. We're trying to pay to get the additional drivers so that we can have all 4 of them out and running.
Right, and of course, what I'm alluding to is not special events, but for our tourists that are going to be on Friday and Saturdays, that said we're going to make a commitment to get them running.
Yeah, and I think Garrett and Rebecca employed a route, and we're going to try to get that off and running.
Do we know when that's going to begin?
As soon as we can get all the buses and enough drivers to carry them out. We've, the first couple of runs that we did with the drivers got extraordinarily bored and sitting and waiting and nobody being there.
Right. Well, and it's going to be that way till it's more dependable. So.
We also want to get, and I don't want to put Garrett on the spot, but we also want to get the new template before the council to see the logo in terms of what those are going to look like. But I have seen the new buses out and about. I hope you have as well.
I haven't, but that's okay. Where was the Barter Gala?
John, did you go to that? Where was the gala?
It was over at the Barter Housing Complex.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, it's across from the old hospital.
Gotcha. I just didn't know where it was. I think the last thing is about the feasibility study for the sports complex, about how that was coming along and when we could expect that.
We're waiting to arrange a kickoff meeting with the consultant right now. So as soon as we can schedule that, we'll get them down here and get that started.
Okay. And I guess that was it.
We can come back to you if you know.
I think that's all. Most of the stuff I wanted to say downstairs in our work session, and we just didn't work out. So Thank you.
Very good, sir. Mr. Howard?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Berry?
Just one thing, Mr. Dew, thank you, and Mr. Kelly and whoever else, Mr. Jackson and getting exit 17 paved, and it only took us like almost a year to convince VDOT to do that, but I've had a lot of calls saying thank you, thank you, thank you. So just for the record, I know you hung out down there until the wee hours of the morning, I guess, but thank you for.
It was worth it.
Oh, it's a vast improvement, so thank you.
Yes, it is, and
Hopefully you can lose your car.
you know, we certainly had plenty of complaints about that. Okay, council, it's still just a few minutes before 7. And
I move we adjourn before 7.
You're right. Is there anyone else that wishes to, anything else anybody wishes to say this evening? I'll make one brief comment as a matter of this evening as a point of familial pride, and that is that my son Peter Morgan completed in a 24-hour race in Pennsylvania this past weekend or the previous weekend, and he managed to win the race. He finished first, won $100 in a clock, and he ran 122 miles in 24 hours, which was, is rather shocking. He was never the fastest boy, but by golly, he could run further than all of us.
Takes after his mom, doesn't it?
Yes, he does. I'll have to say he doesn't get it from his father. We have a couple of announcements that, keeping with tradition, we'll mention. Thursday jams are still on every night, or every Thursday night. J.D. McPherson will be at the Market Pavilion on June the 6th. On June the 8th, Heart Chase will be happening. It is a scavenger hunt themed race, about a mile. Check-in starts at 9 a.m. and the race will start at 10:30 a.m. And that will be at Hartwood. On the 8th, we'll have the historic Abingdon Garden Tour, celebration of blooms, self-guided leisurely place tour with some of the finest gardens in our charming town. And on the 13th, the Thursday Jam will be Chatham County line, again at the Market Pavilion. And on the 14th through the 16th, the Thunder Valley Nationals will be at Bristol Motor Speedway Drag Strip. On the 20th, the Thursday Jams with the broadcast will be at the Market. The Abingdon Blues Festival will be June 22nd, and the June 27th Jam will be Terrence Simeon and the Zydeco Experience. And Mr. Worley, now tell us again when the great swim meet will be.
21st, 22nd, 23rd.
Okay, it's going to be a big one, too.
And then, of course, we have it's not on there, but our work session on the 19th.
Right. We normally would have a mid-month work session. We're not going to have it this go-round. We will probably have a council tour of the new Food City headquarters. So our next regular council meeting will be scheduled for July 1st, 2013. And I expect to see most of you there again. Thank everyone for being here tonight, and we appreciate. First Thursday is this Thursday night. Very good. Thank you, and we will look forward to it, and we'll see you all again. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.